Hello. Bet you didn't think you'd be seeing us soon after yesterday and the Tottenham defeat. But here we are again. This is a Total Saints podcast. Welcome along. A little impromptu, informal look at what's gone on in the last few hours. And I guess there's only one place to start, which is introducing who we've got here. So Alfie's here, having missed a couple of weeks because we kept scheduling them when he was still travelling home from games. And Steve and myself are here. No Martin, unfortunately. So you got to listen to me rambling along at the start. So so the news came through this morning that, in the club's words, we have reached agreement with Ivan Jurić for him to leave, which is basically your sacked.
Sounds a one-way agreement, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those one-way agreements. Personally, loving the fact that we've basically got on with it. I like that, and so far, Johannes Spors has not been messing about. So, Alfie, how was it? How was it for you? How did you hear? What's your day been like with this announcement?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it was a bit of a surprise actually. I got a couple of text messages in the morning, and you sort of think, well, there's usually no smoke without fire. I put it across to the club, and I sort of said, look, I'm happy to sort of wait and for you to confirm it. They didn't deny it as such, but then a couple more started flooding in, and you think, right, well, you're gonna have to break it now, otherwise someone else will. The reason it's a surprise is not because I don't think that he was going to leave or anything like that, but the feeling going into the Spurs game was that unless it was a really bad one, that they wouldn't necessarily make a change straight away, and they might do a couple more games. And 7 games is a long time for an interim coach, for Simon Rusk and Adam Lallana, as we'll get into. But they obviously, I guess the R is next to the name now. It's done. The season's over. They've just decided to get it over and done with, like you said. So, I don't have any strong opinions either way. I think it's fair enough they've done it straight away. Like you say, Johannes Spors getting stuff done. But yeah, I thought maybe they'd kick the can down the road a few more weeks. But yeah, they've been pretty decisive. And I didn't think the Spurs one was really bad. I know you've spoken about it yourselves. It was really bad in the first half, but I didn't think it was like a dreadful one, like a 5-0. But yeah, that first half was awful. So I can sort of see there's been no improvement.
Yeah. Steve, yesterday on TSP, it seems so long ago, we were asking for a statement and saying the club needed to make a statement. I mean, they haven't come out with a worded statement addressing the relegation like they did last time around. But I guess this is as good as we're going to get as a statement.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as we discussed yesterday, the statement 2 years ago was because it had kind of been a relatively unexpected relegation. We were kind of bobbing along in that sort of lower mid-table region for a number of years under Ralph Hasenhüttl, and them kind of getting rid of him, bringing in Nathan Jones, getting rid of him, bringing in Ruben Selles had kind of obviously contributed to the fact that we'd gone down. It was entirely, it felt like it was a self-inflicted move on the part of the owners who kind of wanted to get their hands dirty. Yes, they were very, very dirty by the end of the season. So they kind of had to come out with that sort of mea culpa there. Whereas this one it's very transactional, isn't it? It's very, very much a case of, we manager's gone. This is kind of the vague process of what's going to happen between now and the end of the season. We've got Simon Rusk and Adam Lallana in interim charge, and I wouldn't imagine Rusk even has any sort of even faint hope that he might do anything in this sort of 6 weeks or so where he might suddenly get foisted sort of a proper full-time contract in front of him ahead of next season. I think that's very
from hearing him talk last time, I don't think he sounded remotely interested in even that being the case. But
would you want to take on this mess at the moment?
I mean, you say that, but like at the end of the day, he's given up his 21s job, really, hasn't he? Callum McFarlane has been made the 21s manager, so I don't think there's a job for him there, really. I can't see they'd move Callum back down. So at the end of this season, he's either going to stay on as a first team coach, and obviously has signed a full-time deal, or he's going to go and become a manager somewhere else. So I think that maybe he's not going to push himself into the Saints in the next 7 games, but he probably is playing for a management job somewhere else in the Football League, in the next few weeks.
I don't know. I mean, I think you would imagine that his sort of monetary situation with us is probably a lot better than he's likely to get.
That's true.
Down the leagues at the sort of level we're talking about. I mean, bear in mind his last managerial job was at Stockport, wasn't it? And they were in the National League at the time. So you're probably talking 50, 60 grand tops for that sort of role. It'll be on a lot more than that, even just as a first team coach with us. So yeah, I guess the question for him is whether whoever it is that we decide is going to be the guy to take us forward, whether there's a place for him on the staff. I mean, it might be that we do what we've done a few times, haven't we, over the years, and basically insisted that whoever comes in retains
Carl Martin and so on.
Specific members of staff. So it might be that he's kind of guaranteed a position going into next season anyway, which probably suits him. I think that's. I mean, by the sound of it, his coaching ability is kind of what's held up. I mean, we don't really know an awful lot about his man management. He's done, as you say, done a good job with the under-21s, but that feels like a very different environment to first team football where results are key, whereas the under-21s, it's all about development and pastoral stuff, and that sort of thing.
I think Glenn's obviously disappeared, but he sort of said that he was pretty happy that we've just got the job done. They've got it. They've done the statement. He's gone now. They've got 7 games without him. Did you feel the same way? Did you think that as soon as that game, was full time whistle was blown yesterday, you wanted the departure to happen immediately?
I must admit, I wasn't expecting it this morning. I thought that they would put out just a generic statement to say, yeah, kind of almost an acknowledgement of where we are. But I thought, much like you'd been saying over the past sort of month or so, that there didn't feel like an appetite to even have the conversation of go on, get out the door type thing. So it's kind of always felt as if it was fairly cordial between the board and Urick. So for them to have then kind of brought everything forward and just made the move this morning does feel as if that was a bit of a surprise and a little bit. I don't know whether it was a little bit of a sort of I don't know, kind of they've literally just thought that's sod it, let's do it now. Very sort of I can't even think of the bloody word. Very sort of off the cuff.
I would be intrigued to see if the season ticket prices come out this week as well. I don't know if they will or not, but if they're going to, because I spoke to the club a couple of months ago and they sort of said, look, there's no point releasing next season tickets until we know what league we're going to be in and where we are. So I wonder if that now is a case of
could have done that in October.
Well, true, yeah. But I wonder now if it's a case of we need to sell some tickets and let's make a statement. I don't know if they have that sort of power really, but.
Yeah. I don't know if the fact that there's 4 home games left as well as 3 aways. That's a lot of games with a sitting duck manager who to get through. I mean, it could get pretty unpleasant by the end of that. I know everyone was in sort of fine form yesterday at the end of the game and clapping the team off. Who basically all bar about 3 of them didn't deserve it, but yeah, it would have been interesting to see how it went. Whereas with 2 new guys there, I guess there's not going to be that. There's going to be a little bit more tolerance of things going forward.
Well, ultimately, you stood there, and the guy that's in the dugout isn't responsible for any of this. So, yeah.
So, Ivan Jurić, I think he's kind of thought of as being sort of like quite a nice guy, quite honest. But I mean, at the end of the day, I thought he was pretty useless. What did you sort of make of him to deal with, Alfie? In his time,
I mean, to deal with as a bloke, he's second to none really. I mean, he's fairly short, quiet. We don't get long answers out of him, and it has been a struggle trying to fill inches in the paper the last few months because you ask him a question that you want to get a few lines on, and he'll just say yes or no, which is fine because he's answered the question. But what I would say is, I mean, he's been beaten in 12 out of 14 Premier League games, and in none of those has he had a pop at anybody really. He's never had a pop at me, any other journalist, even players really. He's always just been been honest but cordial and polite. So, I wish him the best. I think he has got a genuine passion and enthusiasm for English football. I mean, you mentioned the fans. He was gobsmacked, as I was, at the reaction yesterday, because I couldn't believe that they were getting clapped off. I could not believe it. And no, fair enough. Fans, you pay the money, you do what you want. I'm not telling you can't. But I was gobsmacked by that. And I think, having come from Italy, he probably expected a very different reaction as well.
Yeah.
So I think he genuinely likes English football. And I feel for him in the sense that, it's going to be very difficult to get a job here again. But yeah, clearly he hasn't improved the team as expected. He was brought in to make them hard to beat, to make them solid defensively. They've conceded, best part of 3 goals a game for 14 games. It's inevitable. But yeah, nothing to say bad about him as a person.
Yeah, I've read a couple of articles in various outlets. One of which was interesting, saying that his honesty, and he probably spoke truth to power, and that's probably why he was released early. What do you make of that? Either of you, did he? I mean, he was saying things like, we've got to learn the lessons. The last 3 or 4 years of, there've been many mistakes. So did he point out a few too many home truths that people didn't like? So that hastened his departure, or do you think that's kind of incidental?
I don't think so. I think there are. I mean, you go back through all of the recent managers, and obviously there are plenty of them. They've all kind of hinted at the same thing over a period of time. Ralph obviously made mention of the fact that he more or less had no money to spend for best part of 4 years. Nathan Jones pinned the blame on everybody before him. Nothing was his fault. Sellers obviously was kind of given the most lamest of lame duck positions for 3 months and told to get on with it. And then you had obviously Russell Martin came in and kind of was quite open about the fact that basically when he first walked into Staplewood, literally every player wanted to leave.
Yeah.
So he's had to kind of deal with that situation where agents are talking and trying to engineer stuff behind his back, and even after he's gone, Urick comes in and he's kind of got a similar situation. But he's obviously also got the on-pitch scenario where we've got 5 points from 19 games at the time. So I think ultimately, I don't think him being outspoken, whether that's in the press, kind of with the stuff that he's either hinted at or the stuff that he's kind of come out and said sort of outright. I don't think that's hastened his exit at all. I think it's because I don't think what he said is either incorrect or any different to what his predecessors have said. And I think the owners would probably themselves accept that the structure isn't right, which is why they've kept on chopping and changing the way the company formation, the club structure, and stuff like that operates.
I think that Ivan has he's shone a light on that again in the last couple of weeks, particularly yesterday. Say his sort of parting message, I suppose, if you knew it at the time or not, was that you have to have players to play a certain way. It's so simple, but this squad cannot play the way that he wants. All right, he thought he could 2 months ago, and he was wrong about that. He admitted he was wrong. But one injury to a striker who wasn't even playing at the start of the season, and you've got Cameron Archer up front for 90 minutes playing long ball, and you think, bloody hell, it's never going to work. And he's right. In 2022-23, we've been through it a million times. They changed the game model to Nathan Jones. They changed it back. The players were completely unsuited for 3 months and then completely confused for the rest of it. They've done something similar again, really, haven't they? In the sense that they've tried to build a squad that obviously played with the ball and was technically good, and they've lacked athleticism and physicality all season, and then they've gone to a style of football which requires athleticism and physicality as its number one attribute, and they've expected a manager to do anything with that. So I think he's right to point that out. Yeah,
fair enough. So he's gone. The king is dead and all that, and we now have a temporary king in Simon Rusk, assisted by Adam Lallana. Now, I know you've spoken, Alfie, to Simon Rusk probably around the time that he managed that game against Fulham. Adam Lallana in any sort of coaching capacity? What have you had any dealings with him in that regard before? I'm trying to forget the fact that, many years ago now, 13, 14 years ago, he sort of came across as incredibly stupid when he left the club the first time round. It does worry me slightly. But obviously he's got a wealth of experience at top clubs and has had a very, very good career as a player. So, what do you make of this incoming partnership?
I think in my interactions with Adam Lallana, and particularly in pre-season in Girona, we had a long conversation. He's very intense. Like talking to him, he sort of stares through you and he pulls sort of faces. He makes it pretty clear what he thinks of what you're saying while you're saying it. He's also very outspoken. And he's very confident. I didn't get the impression that he's stupid, but I guess as a young man, I could see why that might have been the case.
Yeah.
He has got coaching experience. Let's not forget. he did do a bit of coaching with De Zerbi at Brighton, and he coached he was a technical coach for the England's under-21s while he was at Brighton. So, this season he's really parked that to focus on playing. And I don't think he was really part of the Simon Rusk regime the first time round either. I might be wrong. I don't think he was. No. Whereas this time it feels like now, okay, he's probably accepted that his playing is probably done for the season, and he's going to move on to a different role. So he's got a little bit of coaching experience. It's something that he wants to do. So I think it's a perfect opportunity for him. But yeah, he's very intense, very outspoken, very honest. But he's really protective about young players. And I think Simon Rusk is going to come in, and I think that we're going to see a couple of debuts, particularly towards the end of the season. Jay Robinson has been promoted to a first-team player now. He's on their schedule. He's not on 21 schedule anymore. And I imagine there'll be a couple others as well. And I think that, he has that sort of, he puts an arm around Tyler Dibling, he put an arm around Sam Ammo before he left and stuff like that. So he'll have that sort of string to his bow. Yeah.
What do you see as their targets, Steve? I mean, I guess it's get 2 more points.
2 points, yeah.
Yeah. Do you see sort of like much past that? I mean, I guess this leads into the question of, do they think they've got a shot for next season? Do they want one? I mean, it's an interesting point Alfie made earlier on about what Simon Rusk does next season if he doesn't stay as manager. What does Adam Lallana do? Because you've got to assume he's going to quit as a player, you would imagine. And then what? How do you kind of see that panning out?
Yeah, I think ultimately their aims are obviously going to be very woolly. Really, you're not going to be able to define anything other than getting over that 2-point hurdle. If anything, just to see Robbie Savage cry, which I think would please the entire country, quite frankly. There'll even be some Pompey fans who'll enjoy that, I reckon. But yeah, I think beyond that, their kind of credentials, if you like, are going to be tested on whether they can tighten things up a bit. Because I mean, Russell Martin, we weren't. I mean, obviously there were those couple of games at the end where we conceded 5-2 on the bounce at home. Mm-hmm. That Chelsea one I still maintain was a complete freak. We were okay in that game as an attacking force. We just committed suicide. But their credentials are going to be tested on. Can you find a way of tightening things up without basically just sitting on the edge of the penalty area, as we kind of did a little bit at Fulham?
Yeah, that's the worry.
I mean, it worked.
Yeah,
but it got. I mean, we went to Craven Cottage with the sole design of getting a 0-0, and that's exactly what we got, which was aided by Marco Silva massively underestimating his strength in depth. So we were able to get that 0-0 draw relatively comfortably. One big save from Ramsdale towards the end, and that was it.
Steve, do you think they can do that for 7 games though? Like the way that Simon Rusk set up, they can't do
absolutely
that.
Absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
No, it's a really intense thing to do, and we're playing against some teams that, okay, you're probably going to be on the back foot for the most part anyway. So we've got City and Arsenal to come at home. Both of those games, I would imagine, we will play quite defensively. But they'll be looking. I mean, the key thing with both of those, I mean, City especially the way they are at the moment, as a team very much in transition. I think you're looking at a way that you can kind of hurt them on the break. And the problem is we don't have enough pace. Sulemana is the only kind of real pace, out and out pace that we've got. His end product is largely non-existent. Obviously, he got the assist yesterday, but the game was done by then. can he affect games? I mean, obviously he had that great game at Old Trafford, didn't he? Where suddenly everyone was taking note. Oh, who's this lad then? He's only been around 2 years, and suddenly he's put in half decent performance, and everyone's talking about him. But yeah, can somebody work out how to simultaneously get Sulemana and Dibbling in the same team whilst playing a style that utilizes both of them?
Yeah, that suits them both.
Because they're so wildly different, and you almost need to build the team structure around the way that one or the other play. And I don't really see a way how you build a team that accommodates both. So maybe there is a pragmatic choice to be made here of, okay, well, who do we think will benefit the team the most? And you pick one of them and you stick by it, and you basically then build a team structure around that individual and making the most out of their attributes. And then kind of everything else. I mean, frankly, I think most of the rest of the team picks itself for the rest of the season, assuming everyone's fit and available. So it's then about organisation and concentration more than anything, because a lot of our problems have been mental. It's okay, because the pace of the game and the strength of the game at this level is so much different from the Championship. How can you get through 100 minutes of football without switching off? And you run through the entire squad. There isn't a single one of those players, and I include Aaron Ramsdale and players like that who have, like, our best players throughout this season, Matty Fernandez as well. They've all had moments this season where they've switched off, and it's cost us. And so I think the key thing for the rest of the season is a mental one. Can Simon Rusk find a way to kind of combination of coaching and mentoring more than anything? I think it's a mental thing rather than a physical or technical thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a lot of that sort of thing. Just with the fact that we've got, these are basically dead rubbers. So there's not the usual edge to them. So there's going to have to be something applied by the management team to get these players to put in some kind of performance. I mean, I just hope they simplify things, because that's basically the common theme between Russell Martin and Ivan Urick, is that they both tried to get a set of players who are not capable of complicated instruction, playing in a complicated way that was too much for them.
I mean, on that point, I think that Ivan Jurić will leave. I mean, he must leave with a lot of regret about exactly that, because there must have been a way he could have done things differently. I'm not saying it would have made much difference, but sort of, we spoke about the man-to-man to death and things like that, but just why didn't he make it simple for them? I don't get that. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah. Like the West Ham game on Boxing Day. Yeah. Why was that not just the obvious blueprint?
Yeah.
I mean, I know West Ham were crap that night, but why didn't we just kind of stick with that and tweak things a little bit based on the opposition? It's madness.
Yeah, so if you look at that game and you look at the Palace game last week, where we played largely the same way, kept it relatively simple, long ball if there was nothing on, played out if we could, but that was those two games at either end of his time were the way to go, and we wouldn't still be having to listen to crap about Derby County and Robbie Savage. But anyway, 7 games to go. Villa at home on Saturday, is it? And we'll see what happens as we line up 11 men along the edge of our 6-yard line. But we'll see what happens. So moving on, I guess for the purposes of this discussion, we've got to assume that Simon Rusk is not in the running for the permanent job. It's always fun to have a quick look at Odds Checker and or any other betting app that you fancy, and see the list of names that. I mean, there's some comedy ones on there. If you go further down the list, you've got Rob Page, former manager of Wales, Michael Appleton, former manager of Portsmouth.
No,
not quite on there. And he goes down.
Well, Ralph Hasenhüttl was there, so that's the next best.
Ralph Hasenhüttl, Gareth Southgate, these are down in the depths, and then you've got the usual. Oh, Gary O'Neill, another one. And Des Buckingham. Who is Des Buckingham? Who is
he
that?
was at Oxford.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. There's a couple of others I've never. Yeah, there's a few others I've never heard of as well. But I mean, the main one and the name that everyone and 6-4 on is Danny Roll, of course. I mean, I'll ask you about that one, Alfie. I mean, obviously the situation at Sheffield Wednesday, everyone knows about the owner not having paid the players for a month, I think it is.
They got paid today.
And it seems to be coming to a natural end there for Danny Roll. So, I mean, how do you sort of like see that one? Has there been any mention of him in interviews with Johannes Spors and people like that? How do you see that one?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was mentioned in the interview with Johannes Spors, but he just said, "Yeah, I know Danny Rowe. I work with him, but I know a lot of managers. And I've worked with a lot of managers." So obviously, he kept that one fairly, straight and narrow. The reason it's obvious is because we all know that they obviously tried to get Danny Rowe in December to replace Russell Martin, and for whatever reason, Chancery or compensation clause, whatever it wasn't possible. And like you said, I mean, that video of Danny Rowe doing a bit of media after their recent game, I mean, it looks like he'd been kidnapped. Clearly he is wanting out of Sheffield Wednesday at this point. He won't be there by the end of the season. But the problem is, and I've had messages from people, not from trusted sources, but from people saying, I've been told Danny Roll's done, and we've got a verbal agreement. There's a gentleman's agreement with Sheffield Wednesday, stuff like that. I'm not sure a gentleman's agreement with Sheffield Wednesday exists, because I don't think you can do one with Chancery. But I don't know if anything is done or anything like that. I'd be surprised if it was. But clearly he'll be the number one target for me. I think he will be the number one target. Can they get him? Leicester are going to be looking for a manager. There's other clubs looking for a manager as well. So, he's the one that keeps on coming up. He's the one that makes sense. Whether they'll get him or not, I don't know. But there's other names on there that, should be considered. Steve Cooper would be one that I would consider personally. I know we've spoken about it in the podcast group chat with our patrons a little bit. He's one that I would consider. And I'm sure there's a couple other names that you can come up with as well that are probably worth a shout.
One name that's not on the list, which actually quite surprised me, which was Russell Martin.
Well, he's 40-1 on Betfair.
Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah.
But I've seen he's been linked with Leicester today, I think. So that would be an interesting one. But I mean, at the end of the day, he's a guy that knows how to get out of the Championship at the right end. But the other one that kind of massively springs to mind for me is Liam Rosenior. Now, I wonder whether the job he's done at Strasbourg has actually been too good.
100%.
And now as a result, he's probably out of reach.
I can't see why a manager would go from 5th in French League, competing for Europe, to the Championship. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So for me, I'm ruling that one out. I would love to be wrong, but I can't see that happening. Unless
he's got a case of homesickness or something like that, or something that's calling him back to the country, then I honestly can't see that because of the job he's done at Strasbourg with one of our players on loan, by the way. That's an interesting one. He sort of like he sort of came up on the rails, for potential managers, and it's just the job he's done this year has been superb. I
think we should also say that. Sorry to cut you off, Glenn, but we should say that Johannes Spors has been very clear about what he wants in a manager. And he has made it absolutely 100% crystal clear that he wants a manager who plays a high pressing game, an aggressive, high intensity style, quite similar to what they wanted from Ivan Jurić. He wants to focus on long balls if you have to, but set pieces, being good on corners, being good on free kicks, stuff like that. So that narrows down the pool of managers they're looking for slightly. Yeah,
hopefully that rules out Steven Gerrard, who is one name on this list, unless he can still play.
Frank Lampard has come up. Frank Lampard has come up. He's doing a brilliant job at Coventry, to be fair. I mean, 6 months ago, I said no way, but he's doing all right. Yeah,
David Wagner. He was awful, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, the one experience we had with David Wagner
massively overachieved, didn't he, to get Huddersfield promoted with a negative goal difference.
And they stayed up for one season.
Yeah. But then, it all went horribly wrong second season, as it always would do for a club like that, I think. but also his next job at Norwich. I mean, that game that we had up there, was that New Year's Day?
Yeah.
Where, I mean, that was the most cowardly home team setup I've ever seen.
Josh Sargent scores.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have been 4-5-0 up in that game. Mm-hmm. It was one of those games that we absolutely tossed away last season. It was last season, wasn't it? Yeah. But it was most infuriating for the fact that even Norwich fans were furious with the way that they'd set their team up for that game, because everyone knew that defensively we were suspect. I mean, we conceded 60 goals in the Championship last season. And yet he was so scared of kind of what our attack could do that he just nullified anything that they had to offer up front, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Wayne Rooney. He's on the list. Ryan Mason, John Terry, Chris Hughton. Where's he these days?
He was
abroad somewhere, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, some national team.
I think you're right, Steve. Yeah. And Casper Hillman always seems near the top of any sort of odds, but I don't really understand why. Michael Carrick is another one who's sort of been kind of average in the Championship. I would hope we could do better than that. Sean Dyche.
Come up. Oh, Sean Dyche, yeah.
Sean Dyche is on the list.
Let's narrow it down to a couple of names. What of the names that we have said would we be happy with? Obviously, Danny Roll we would be happy with, I presume.
Yeah.
Steve Cooper, would you be happy with that?
I think I would take Cooper. I think there would be games where it really wouldn't be pretty with him. But he strikes me as a very adaptable manager. And I think that is the kind of problem we've had with basically the last two managers, really, is that they haven't been adaptable enough for the differing circumstances that we faced. So that I think would count in Cooper's favour, certainly.
And obviously, I mean, though, as we've discussed, it's unlikely. Liam Rossini, I think most people would be happy with that, as he did a relatively good job at Hull, and obviously he's done a fantastic job at Strasbourg.
Well, I mean, you look at what Hull have done since he left.
Yeah. I must admit, I mean, when he finished 7th with that whole squad, I did think, he could have done better. It wasn't an unbelievable whole squad, but clearly they've fallen.
You could see why the owner was annoyed, because he poured in. I mean, they'd spent 6-7 million in that January, hadn't they? Plus wages to get players like Carvalho in on loan, thinking that was going to. You would have expected at least to still finish in the top 6.
But let's not forget that the man who finished ahead of their team was David Wagner from Norwich. So I'm not saying that they should get him, but it's only Sky Sports.
And look at how well that went in the playoffs.
Yeah, 4-0 to Leeds.
But looking at the list, I would still be very surprised if it's anyone other than Danny Roll, given the connections that we've got, given the fact that he clearly wants out of Sheffield Wednesday. I would be surprised if it's anyone else on that list.
Unless there's a left field appointment from
Germany or Europe.
German second division or something like that.
Yeah.
Which
Jurgen Klopp's not on this list.
No.
Well, his assistant Pep Linders is on the list. Pep Linders obviously sacked Salzburg. I can't see that happening.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I mean, he always kind of talked a good game when he was wheeled out for Carabao Cup games, but it's one of those where I think if you're always in the shadow of a big name manager, how do you ever pull yourself out of it?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's more or less, unless anyone's got anything else they want to say particularly about Ivan Jurić. You're going to miss him, Alfie?
I won't. I mean, I honestly wish he did better. I like him as a bloke. I wish he did better. I wish him all the best in his next job. But for us commercially, it's definitely beneficial that he won't be here anymore, so we can actually fill a newspaper every week rather than scrambling to make his 4 words seem like more.
Actually, making you do some work for it.
Yeah, just chuck it in the chat GPT. You got anything else, Steve? Or are we done with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, frankly, it's been it's been a frustratingly dull few months, hasn't it? I think repetitive in the way that mistakes have been made, predictable in the way that mistakes have been made. And I mean, as you say, it's been bookended by performances that actually, if you've just done that all the way through, we probably wouldn't be sat here having this conversation. So yeah, just one of frustration really that that the obvious wasn't seen really.
Yeah, and that's been a point we've been making for the last sort of like 2 or 3 months. The obvious things have not been done, and on the very rare occasion we've got close to doing the obvious things in terms of team selection and style of play, we've actually not looked horrific. Certainly not horrific enough to be having to answer media queries about Derby's records. So let's hope that Simon Rusk and Adam Lallana get that done as soon as possible, and then we can just focus on the summer and next season. But okay, that's all for now. Thanks for listening and watching, and we'll see you back with Total Saints Podcast on